A rubber suction cup pressed hard against cold glass. 2007. This is Rise and Fall, and this is the story of TomTom, the $6 billion company that built the modern map, spent almost €3 billion buying it outright to protect itself, and still lost the war to something that cost drivers nothing at all. Nobody stole TomTom's map. TomTom bought it, in full, at the top of the market. That's where this one goes wrong. Picture the ritual. You've just parked. Before you get out of the car, you peel the dark gray box off the windscreen, wind the cable around it, and drop it in the glove box, under the road atlas you haven't opened in a year. Then you wipe the ring the suction cup left on the glass, because everyone on that street knew what a ring on a windscreen meant. There used to be something worth stealing here. Millions of people did that every evening on 3 continents. TomTom's founders weren't blindsided by what eventually killed them. They saw it coming years early and spent almost €3 billion trying to get ahead of it. That decision is exactly what left them standing in the wrong place when the ground moved. Rewind to Amsterdam, 1991. 2 graduates, Peter Franz Pauwels and Pieter Gielen, start a small company called TomTom Software, spreadsheets and utilities for handheld computers. Nothing to do with maps. Karine Vigru joins from the British handheld pioneer Sion to get the software sold abroad. Harold Godayan, who'd run Sion's Dutch office, buys in and becomes CEO, pointing the whole company at one idea: put a map in a car on a screen with a voice. In 2001, TomTom Software becomes TomTom. In 2004, it releases the TomTom Go, GPS receiver, digital maps, touchscreen, and speaker. All in one plastic shell you could stick to a windscreen and use in under a minute. No laptop wedged on the passenger seat. No factory system reserved for the luxury trim. Just a box, a suction cup, and a voice telling you where to turn. It wasn't only useful, it was fun. TomTom sold downloadable voice packs, so your car could be steered home by Homer Simpson, or Darth Vader growling you toward the dark side at the next left, or Snoop Dogg. It's why people talked about their GPS at dinner parties, instead of using it in silence. And underneath the novelty was something simpler. The argument that had defined every family road trip for 50 years. One person driving, one person squinting at a folded map. Both convinced. Other missed the turn, just stopped happening. Watch what that one product did to the balance sheet. Revenue went from tens of millions of euros to roughly 700 million in 3 years. In May 2005, TomTom went public in Amsterdam, valued near 2 billion euros. 2 years later, the stock had nearly tripled. Of course it won. TomTom understood something its rivals hadn't fully grasped. Drivers didn't just want directions, they wanted relief and a voice they actually enjoyed. They'd pay 300 or 400 euros for that without blinking. Underneath the success sat a problem nobody outside the industry noticed. TomTom didn't own a single road. Every arrow on that screen came from a map it licensed from somebody else, and there were only 2 databases in the world detailed enough to build a real product on. One belonged to Tele Atlas. The other belonged to an American company called Navtech. That was the entire industry. 2 suppliers, and TomTom's whole brand sat on a license it had to keep renewing on someone else's terms. Then, in October 2007, Nokia bought Navtech outright for over $8 billion. A phone company had just bought half the road data on the planet. TomTom didn't get to watch from the sidelines. It had already bid on the other database, Tele Atlas, and now Garmin, its biggest rival, jumped in to try to take it away. A bidding war followed that TomTom couldn't afford to lose, and couldn't really afford to win. It ended near the close of 2007, with TomTom paying almost 3 billion euros just to own the one thing standing between it and being an empty plastic shell. That's the trap. TomTom wasn't chasing an opportunity, it was cornered into one. Lose the map and the whole company was worthless overnight. So it paid whatever the market demanded and took on a mountain of debt to do it. Right before the worst financial crisis in 80 years. Both readings of that decision are true at once. A brilliant defensive move and the worst timed purchase in the company's history. What nobody in that boardroom could price in was that the thing they just paid billions to own was, within 2 years, about to become worthless, not because a rival stole it, but because someone was about to give the exact same thing away for free. 2008 looked, on paper, like TomTom's best year ever. 12 million devices sold, revenue near 1.7 billion euros. That same year, TomTom had already written off more than a third of what it paid for Tele Atlas as a straight accounting loss. The real threat hadn't even launched yet. In August 2009, TomTom put full navigation on the iPhone. A month later, it announced a windscreen mount built specifically for an iPhone, without quite realizing it had just built the accessory for its own replacement. Then, in October 2009, Google announced Google Maps navigation for Android. Turn by turn. Spoken guidance. Live traffic, free. Not discounted, free. Here's the part that's easy to miss. Google wasn't in the mapping business the way TomTom was. TomTom needed you to pay for the map because the map was the entire product. Google needed you to open an app on an Android phone so it would know where you were going, and what you might buy along the way. The map was bait, built to keep you inside a phone that made its money elsewhere, in search, in ads, in exactly the location data that makes an advertising platform worth hundreds of billions of dollars. TomTom was selling a product. Google was giving one away to build an empire around it. TomTom had spent nearly 3 billion euros making certain nobody could ever take its map away. Nobody did. Somebody simply built a business that didn't need to charge for it at all. What followed wasn't a crash. It was a slow removal. Shelves that once held walls of gray navigation boxes shrank to a single row, then a single shelf, then nothing. By 2018, TomTom was writing down hundreds of millions more, telling investors the outlook for stand-alone devices kept getting worse. In 2019, it sold its profitable fleet telematics division to Bridgestone for over 900 million euros, just to fund the fight for what was left of the map. In 2023, it stopped selling navigation devices in the US and Canada entirely. By 2024, revenue sat at roughly a third of its 2008 peak. You've probably heard the short version. Google killed TomTom, free beat paid, end of lesson. But TomTom didn't actually disappear. Open the traffic layer on Bing Maps, and you're looking at TomTom data. Apple has leaned on TomTom's maps inside Apple Maps since 2012. Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Hyundai licensed TomTom for their dashboards. Uber's map layer, in hundreds of cities, runs on TomTom underneath. Today, over 80% of TomTom's revenue comes from licensing that map to businesses, not selling it to drivers. TomTom didn't lose the map. It still has it. What it lost was the idea that anyone would ever pay for it out in the open again. The ring is gone from the glass. But look at the screen built into the middle of almost any new car's dashboard. There's an arrow moving across it, quietly, with nobody's brand printed near it. There's a very real chance the road underneath, that arrow was drawn by the same company that started as 2 students writing spreadsheet software in Amsterdam in 1991. The box just moved from something you hid on the glass to something built permanently, invisibly, into the dashboard, doing the exact same job it always did. If you ever had one of those boxes on your dashboard, tell us which celebrity voice you downloaded. And subscribe next week. A company that made the opposite mistake. It owned its core asset completely, with no licensing and no dependency. $8 billion paid in full, It lost anyway?